Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the U.S. government's most secretive and controversial programs, a hidden war that it waged against its own citizens, one that was never ever supposed to see the light of day. So let's get right into it. Everything kicks off with this one central question. How on earth did a top-secret, illegal FBI program that had been running for 15 years get completely blown wide open? Now, the answer isn't some team of super spies or a high-level government whistleblower. Nope, it was a group of ordinary people who just decided to risk everything. So I want you to picture the scene. It's a cold night in a small town right outside of Philadelphia. While pretty much all of America is glued to their TV sets, something really extraordinary is about to go down in this quiet, unassuming office building. Now, these folks were not professional criminals. I mean, we're talking about a group that included college professors, a daycare director, even a cab driver. They were activists who had this gut feeling the government was illegally spying on people, and they wanted to find proof. So they hatched a plan for a full-on heist. And get this, their timing was absolutely perfect. That very night was the legendary fight of the century between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. The whole country, including the police, was completely distracted. So the burglars just slipped in, grabbed the files, and slipped right back out. And here's the incredible irony. Muhammad Ali himself was one of COINTELPRO's biggest targets because of his opposition to the Vietnam War. So the burglars got away with more than 1,000 secret documents. And what they do with them? They started anonymously mailing them to journalists. And what those files revealed? Well, it was more shocking than anyone could have possibly imagined. As reporters sifted through all this paperwork, this one strange acronym kept popping up at the bottom of official memos: COINTELPRO. It was the very first time that name had ever been seen outside the walls of the FBI. The secret was out. Okay, so what exactly was it? Well, COINTELPRO stood for Counterintelligence Program, and it was, for all intents and purposes, a secret war waged by the FBI against its own citizens. It was a whole series of covert projects designed to disrupt, discredit, and completely destroy political movements right here in the United States. And let's be clear, this wasn't just about watching people from a distance. This quote here is from the official directive, straight from the top, from FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover himself. The mission was aggressive: expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize political groups and their leaders. I mean, those are some chillingly direct words. So this begs the next big question, right? Who exactly was the FBI trying to neutralize? The answer really shows you just how far this whole thing had spun out of control. You gotta remember, COINTELPRO started back in 1956, at the absolute height of the Cold War. So its original target, which kind of makes sense for the time, was the Communist Party USA. But that very narrow focus, it did not last long. Before long, the program's scope just exploded. The target list ballooned to include pretty much anyone the FBI decided was subversive. We're talking about civil rights leaders, student anti-war protesters, Black Power groups, feminist organizations, and in a very strange twist, even white supremacist groups like the Ku Klux Klan, though the FBI's efforts against them were often way less intense. So here's the real kicker: the massive gap between what the FBI said it was doing and what it was actually doing. The stated goal was always protecting national security. But the reality, which a Senate investigation later confirmed, was that they were targeting overwhelmingly non-violent American citizens simply for exercising their right to free speech. So how did they do it? Well, those stolen files and the investigations that followed laid out a systematic playbook of dirty tricks. It was all designed to destroy these movements from the inside out. Just look at this playbook. Agents didn't just spy, they actively went in to cause chaos. They used psychological warfare, planting fake news stories in the media, forging letters to make allies turn on each other. They used the justice system for pure harassment with false arrests. And in the most extreme cases, they actually conspired with local police to carry out illegal raids and violence. And maybe the most famous target of all was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. After his I Have a Dream speech, J. Edgar Hoover branded him the most dangerous man in America and basically made it a personal crusade to destroy him. The FBI's campaign against King got so ugly it led to this. They sent him an anonymous package. Inside was this letter, along with secretly recorded tapes of his extramarital affairs. The message was unmistakable, and it was monstrous. Commit suicide, or we will ruin you. Another major target for COINTELPRO was the Black Panther Party. A memo from 1968 spelled out their goal in no uncertain terms: to prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify and electrify the militant Black nationalist movement. The tactics they used against the Panthers were particularly deadly. The FBI forged letters to provoke actual shootouts between the Panthers and rival gangs. And their informant, a man named William O'Neill, gave Chicago police a detailed floor plan of Fred Hampton's apartment, which led directly to a raid where Hampton and Mark Clark were shot and killed in their sleep. But it's important to know the FBI's actions weren't just aimed at activists of color. Take the case of Viola Liuzzo. She was a white mother of 5 kids from Detroit who drove down to Alabama in 1965 to help with civil rights voter registration drives. Viola was shot and killed by members of the Ku Klux Klan while driving activists. Now here's the truly shocking part. One of the 4 Klansmen in the car that night was a paid FBI informant. And after her murder, instead of trying to get justice, J. Edgar Hoover personally ordered a smear campaign, spreading disgusting, false rumors that she was a communist and a drug user who had abandoned her family. As you can imagine, the leak from that little office in Pennsylvania created an absolute firestorm. For the first time, Congress and the American public had undeniable proof of the FBI's widespread, systematic abuse of power. Facing a tidal wave of public outrage, Hoover had no choice but to officially shut down COINTELPRO in 1971. A few years later, the Senate finally launched a massive investigation, led by Senator Frank Church. They called it the Church Committee, and they held televised hearings that laid bare the program's crimes for the entire nation to see. And this right here was their final, damning verdict. The committee concluded that the FBI had gone way beyond law enforcement. They had become, in the committee's own words, a sophisticated vigilante operation. Their goal wasn't stopping crime, it was silencing dissent and stopping Americans from exercising their constitutional rights. So the huge question we're left with is this. The program with the name COINTELPRO is gone. Yes, it officially ended. But its legacy forces us to keep asking a question that's just as relevant today as it was back in 1971. What lines are we willing to let our government cross in the name of security?